there's 3 questions. I think they're all interrelated. I do believe a study actually came out today from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce that talked about job creation. I think the number that they put out was 65,000 jobs was created, which is different. You said jobs impacted, which I think deals with hotels and other things as well, right? The question, though, generally, here's the parts of the question. How many of them are local jobs? How many of them are temporary jobs? And how many of them are permanent jobs? Those are the questions.
We work with the Ohio Chamber, and primary difference between the 2 studies is, just as you said, and also the difference in the numbers is their study only went through 2014. And so where we're seeing the largest increase is by 2015. And if you look at the Pennsylvania numbers, for example, and you're looking at 229,000 jobs that were created there, 7 out of every 10 jobs were Pennsylvania's. I see Ohio doing something very similar. Now the reality is, I don't care what business you're in. If it's McDonald's or there's a corporate headquarters someplace, that corporate headquarters may not be in the state of Ohio. It'd be nice to have everybody's corporate headquarters. So there will still be some jobs that will be from maybe a corporate headquarters outside of the state of Ohio. But at the end of the day, I think what's most important is we are talking about American jobs here, not foreign jobs.
We can still answer the question. I was going to follow up on that. And the question is, how many are temporary, how many are permanent?
When you're looking at, for example, the most temporary portion is the drilling, but that's on one particular location. And that drilling contractor is then going to go to another location. So you have to define the drilling operation as temporary, but it's ongoing. And so the geoscientist, it's ongoing. Every day you drill new wells, and every day you plug wells. Okay, it's just the reality, it's just the cycle. So I think what you're looking at is long-term jobs. The main temporary jobs that I would see could be in certain road construction. Okay, that could be in some landscaping. That could be, I know that in the housing market in North Dakota, they've got 7,000 homes right now waiting to be built. We're not going to quite have that problem here in Ohio because we've got a great infrastructure. When you're looking at the construction of the new cracking facility, that's 17,000 permanent jobs, 10,000 temporary construction jobs. So it depends on whether it's upstream, midstream, or downstream.
And I think that someone can correct me if I'm not summarizing this properly, is the permanent jobs are because generally they're moving from site to site, and those may not necessarily be local jobs. Local construction for the actual site or the road improvement would be local people, but they'd be temporary in general. The permanent jobs are, you're talking about people in Ohio in general, they may or may not be Medina County residents.
Well, every one of these wells have to have somebody operate them and take care of them. And there's somebody that's going to handle the royalties. There's going to be somebody that's going to handle leasing. You're going to have to maintain local pipelines. You've got to have the well tender on location. Those are local jobs. You've got to operate. Ma'am, I have worked for an oil and gas producer for a long time. I certainly have a good understanding of what are local jobs and what aren't. Your well tender is going to be somebody that is going to be local. You can't operate that from Houston. Okay, so a lot of these are going to be local jobs, and I think that's been the commitment of even some of the larger companies coming into town, is that they plan on hiring Ohioans. Initially, are all of them? No. The geoscientist might be sitting in Oklahoma City.
Well, I understand that, Ron. I think that the question generally is Medina County jobs, Medina County residents. And what I'm hearing is that we're talking Ohio in general. You need people in Ohio. It's not going to be an out-of-state person, but it may or may not be a Medina County resident.
Well, what I can tell you is, again, we're working with every community college, career center, colleges and universities throughout the state, primarily on the eastern part of the state, because right now some of those skilled labor jobs, we don't have them. So until we get some of that training, which is what we're doing over the next 2 years, before the major impact will start in 2015 on some of these, that's why we're training the workforce now.
All right. I'm going to move on, Kathy. I'm going to let Ron respond.
Okay, I don't know where Rhonda got her figures on the Pennsylvania jobs, and I'm not saying they're inaccurate, but it's another study that I had seen on Pennsylvania, and you can Google this, on 900%, that the industry projections were off by 900% for job creation in Pennsylvania. Now that was for a certain time period, maybe a different time period, but you can Google that and look for that. In Ohio, the industry they had 3 universities that did a study funded by the industry that made a very rosy prediction for Ohio jobs. Ohio State University came along and did a critique of that study and did their own study. This was an independent study, not funded by the industry. And they said that the industry projections were off by 900%. So, you know, we get a lot of promises. Bottom line, folks, and maybe I'll answer every other question with the same answer. It doesn't matter. What matters is what you want in your township and what you want your township to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's what you need to think about.
All right, just to follow up, I told Rhonda I was not going to go back and forth on this. If it's a question that you're really interested in, I'm sure that there are plenty of studies and things out there on the internet. I'd suggest you look it up. If you believe that one of them's being truthful, one of them's not being truthful, well, then you have the opportunity to look it up. I don't want them to go back and forth and argue up here because they're going to keep throwing studies at me, and none of us are here. I haven't seen the studies. I don't know the margin of errors. I don't know the population that's been studied. Don't know what the underlying studies have said. And there's a lot of other things out there that we simply just can't get into in this short period of time. All right. Mike Chadsey, specific question for you. You said you were not funded by taxpayers, but who specifically are you funded by? And are you willing to disclose the identity of your primary funding agents?
Sure. It is true, not funded by tax dollars, but we're funded through the IPAA and...
What's the IPAA?
The Independent Petroleum Association of America is IPAA. And they have various different members. Is that the answer to the question? Chesapeake, Devon, Anadarko, Hess, those are some of the major economies. There are others, several thousand members.
And I'm sure that's another one that you can probably look up at this point if you want to know the rest. I'm sure that's all public information, right? Question for the energy development community. How much water does the average Ohio horizontally fracked well use, and where does that water come from? I think we've talked about where it comes from. How much is actually used? Probably a pretty simple answer, right? Yeah, you may have. Okay. I thought it was like, you talked about it, John, like 1.4 million. We're talking about millions, not billions, right? 1 to 4 million gallons. Okay. 1 to 4 million gallons somewhere is what John is advising. All right, this question, I want to boil it a little bit different than the question the way it's asked. Are there people in the medical industry that are speaking out against the hydraulic fracking industry and the health effects that it has? Do you know of anybody, either side?
My colleagues over there may know some others, but the one I know of that's probably the best known is Dr. Theo Colburn, and she has worked in Colorado and studied the impacts of oil and gas drilling on populations living out there, especially has analyzed fracking fluids, but also concerned about air quality and how it's affected people. I recently talked to an official of Cuyahoga County. He's an assistant to the county executive, Ed Fitzgerald, and he told me he's gathering facts on fracking because they're worried about it. Even in Cuyahoga County, you think Cleveland, why would they drill in Cleveland? But there are a lot of suburban areas in Cuyahoga County that have a lot of open spaces and a lot of suburbs. But anyway, he told me that one of the groups he talked to were the doctors. in the county. He talked to several of the doctors, and he said they are very, very concerned about this. And he said they are very much on your side. So that there is a lot of concern. I forgot Dr. Sandra Steingraber is another prominent person. She'll be speaking at Kent State Stark Campus. And when is that, March 14th.
All right, that's another thing you can look up. I do want to just, there's a difference between concern and research studies. That's the only thing I would like to point out. You know, being an engineer that's trained in statistics and other things, I like to look at statistics and numbers, and I like to see research studies as opposed to concerns. Though concerns do lead to research studies, and they are important because they help form hypotheses. It's the research studies that I think the real question is trying to get to the heart of. Sure, absolutely. All right, here's the question that was put. Just to go through, and here's what I'd like to say, and I'd like to just move forward on this. The question was, are there independent groups that can verify the claims of the parties that are up here? Well, the whole purpose, and what I'll tell you is generally the people who are motivated to do studies and research are the people who do them. And so is there a watchdog organization? Probably not at this point. I mean, to the extent that you have them, it'd be ODNR and the Ohio, or the EPA. And those are the organizations that would have those types of information, and you probably want to look at it. The problem is that they're always tainted by the administration, whatever the administration policies are. And that can vary from one administration to the next. So they're not always consistent, and they're not always adequate. I think the whole purpose is to listen to what you're hearing here today. You may not have the answer today when you leave here, but to follow up on those things on your own and come to your own conclusion. That's my goal. I mean, I think it's a hard question to ask. I will get to it. I want to finish with the questions I have here, okay, if I could. All right. All right. Well, I only have a few more. I'm almost done. If you want to go, I mean, we can go. It's not. I'm not forcing anybody, I don't think. All right, for Sandra and Steve, what viable alternative do you propose to supply the equivalent energy and revenue and jobs that this gas will? Steve, Ron, whoever.
That's a good question, because there has to be a viable alternative. And as I said before, you know, what is the point of tearing up the whole country and ruining communities for energy if we, in the end, you're going to run out of these resources anyway. We're going to eventually have to turn to green energy anyway. So why don't we do it now before we tear up the whole country, ruin our townships, ruin our air and our water. And yeah, is every world going to have a catastrophe right away? No, I never said that. But what I'm saying is think about scaling up. When you have a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, the more you have, the more impact you're going to have. I think even our industry people would concede that. It's just a matter of, like, if you build factories, build a ring of factories around your township. 1 factory will cause problems, 2 more problems, 12 or 20 factories will cause a lot more problems. It's the same thing.
All right, I got 4 more questions, so we try to stay as brief as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said at the beginning that no one energy source can do it all, and I think the question is, you know, what would you suggest to replace it? Because when you're looking about, you know, 85% of our needs are right now depend on fossil fuels. You can't just say that should all go away and then we've got no energy. When you look at solar and wind, you need the natural gas and you need the current energy in order to create those products that make that energy source work. And if you look at just solar panels alone, 85% of Arizona would need to be covered by solar panels. in order to meet their current energy needs. So some of it's not realistic, but again, as I said in the very beginning, no one energy source can do it all, and we should look at all energy sources. And as an energy education program, we do look at all energy sources.
Well, what I'll tell you is that whenever you talk about the needs of any country, the United States actually I think makes up 25% of all energy consumption of the world. So we are consumers here more than any other country. And so to that extent, what other countries do is not really relevant to what the United States does, because we consume at a much higher rate than other countries. A lot of the alternative energies, the problems, that my understanding is the ability to storage and make it efficient. Solar is a perfect example. And so research and development is needed to make it more efficient, but at this time, it's not as efficient. So in the interim, there's these other things that are out there. What I'm saying is there's a lot more to it than what we're hearing here right now, and I don't think you should walk away thinking that these are all the answers. I do think that Ron makes a lot of points in the sense that alternative energy is important. I also think that it's not necessarily the answer now, because the research and development in that field isn't far enough along to really move us to where we need to go for what we consume. So unless we cut back consumption, we're going to have what we have. All right. Anybody on both panels, has anybody here ever worked on a drill rig, worked on a frac job site, or serviced a well rig?
No, thank God. I'm proud of the fact that when my very first start in the oil and gas business, actually started in Marietta, Ohio, and I had this very small operators that took me out on my first drilling rig. The last time I was out on a hydraulic fracturing was back in December. And actually the frac sand that I brought today, my coffee cup, I emptied it out and I scooped up the frac sand. So yeah, in 25 years I've been on hundreds of locations and operations, and very proudly, very honored by the people that have taught me what I know today.
I've been on extractive energy sites. I guess I haven't worked on it. But have you been on the Oh, you work? Yeah. Really? Yeah.
Okay. To answer to the question, have you worked on a well rig? Have you worked at a fracking site? Have you worked at a drill site?
But in the interest of full disclosure, I actually used to work for the East Ohio Gas Company. My colleagues don't even know that. I didn't even tell them that yet. But I worked on storage wells. So my job was to calculate the pressure of storage wells. So I learned from a pretty young age, this is when I was in college, I really learned a lot of respect for the workers. I had a lot of respect for them. And I learned a lot of respect for the power, the explosive power of natural gas.
I'll work for whoever pays me.
All right, this question I'm not going to ask, but the question is generally, I'm going to say it so the person knows I'm going to address it. Should the county commissioners pass something to protect the roadways, and if something happens catastrophic to a property owner, county commissioners aren't here, I think we'd have to ask them. I don't think this panel is appropriate to ask that question, because that's really a question that needs to go to the county commissioners. But that does bring me to the next question, is does the Ohio permitting process prevent communities for enacting local controls?
Yes, it does. In Chapter 1509, everything resides with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
I think absent road use agreements, which is a little bit different. Road use agreements are actually about the traffic and control that comes through. But as far as the actual on-site, it prohibits them from doing anything, right?
Okay, I would take a little bit of exception to that. The state of Ohio asserts that local communities have no authority over oil and gas drilling. That's, according to our law director, that is open to question. Just recently, we had a decision that was handed down in New York, in Triton, New York. Actually, 2 judges decided that local communities regulating zoning of siting of wells is not illegal. The state had asserted it was illegal in New York. We think Ohio is a similar situation, that both can be enforced in parallel, but we're not going to know that until we have a court case. It has to be contested in court.
I would agree with that. I stand on the side of them in general, and I know Sandra and I have disagreed on that topic, but I generally believe it's beyond local control. I know that they have a difference of opinion with me on that. She says it's because I'm tainted as a prosecutor. I blame it on Marv. Marv works with me. Him and I work together at the prosecutor's office. This is a question I've held to the end, and it's a question I have. My understanding is that there's a propane gel that's used for actual drilling of wells that's used in Canada. I don't know as much about it. It's something that relatively came to me about a week ago. I tried to do more research on it. It's pretty sparse. And the question is how come we aren't doing that in the United States? Because the understanding is it has less of an environmental impact. Maybe you all can answer that.
I think with anything non-oil and gas, but I think when you look at products we're using in our home, fuels that we're trying to use, I think that everybody is trying to have a reduction in environmental impact. The diesel gels, and just like I mentioned, the foam, I'm more familiar in the fact that they're trying to use foam to reduce that water, to address the concern of water. So I think technology is constantly changing, and as best practices or as things prove to be successful, you often see that replicated, and not only just in one area but across the state. I will mention something. Marietta College happens to be one of the oldest petroleum engineering schools in the country. It's located right here in the state of Ohio. And one of the neat things about Marietta College is it also gives us access to some of the first technologies. And so oftentimes as an industry, my organization, when we are doing industry training sessions, we do want to bring in the best technology. It's not being used wide practice. I think it still needs to be tested, and I guarantee you somebody will object to anything being diesel or otherwise in there. So we're going to test it.
Well, and there's no doubt. The first thing that came to my mind when I read it, and supposedly it's cleaner for the environment, I don't know. But the first thing that came to my mind is there's probably somebody that's going to object to using a propane product to drill. So.
Right, because I know that recently there was a case about a concern about using diesel in hydraulic fracturing, which in Ohio we are not allowed to do that. And so just want to clarify that.
Sandra, go ahead.
I, like Mike Todd, is I'm always interested in learning new methods for doing this that perhaps might be safer, and I'm also interested in the gel and the foam fracturing method. However, I did find back in 1987 there was a U.S. EPA study that did correlate gel from the fracturing process and correlated that with contaminated well water in West Virginia. I just found that report last night, actually, so that kind of threw out the window any hopes I had that the gel might be actually safer.
Thank you. All right, those are it for the questions. We did do certificates of appreciation for everybody being here. We also have a bag. What I'll tell you is each one of these people is sacrificing their own time to be here. I know you are as well, and I appreciate, as you can see, the crowd has thinned out over the course of the night, which is understandable. We've been here a long time. But I do appreciate it. And so I'm just going to go down real quick. I don't want to make this a long, but John, Alvy, come on up, get your gift. Your parting gift in your bag. Thank you. All right, Bill Bramley. No photo opportunities here, we're just moving on. All right. Sandra Billett. the other guy that's passing out the bags, that's Ray Jarrett, Township Trustee. Appreciate him staying the whole night with me on my quixotic mission to educate. Mike Chadsey. Ron Dorado. Marilyn Evans. Steve? No, we'll give an effort. And Rob Rosa. All right, that wraps up the night. If there are any specific questions to me, I'll take them. I don't want to bother them anymore. I will stay as long to answer any questions that anybody has. Yeah.